Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss another breathtaking moment from last night's BBC Question Time, where it was demonstrated just how out of touch the Tories are with the public, including with their own voters, as this time they showed just how little support there is for the government's flagship Rwanda policy. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So there was a stunning moment during last week's Question Time. This is now setting a trend. Had even more devastating encore last night. So last week, the host of the political talk show, Fiona Bruce, made clear that the audience is made up such that there are more Conservative voters in the audience than voters for any other single party. I think the implication is that they get people in according to the national voting behaviour. That would imply 43% of audience members voted Conservative in 2019. She's also previously said that they make sure the audience is tilted towards Brexit voters as per the referendum result nearly 7 years ago, because that makes sense. So when things like this happen, it's especially devastating for the government. Last week, she asked people to put their hands up if they thought Boris Johnson had told the truth during his Partygate hearing the previous day. Not a single hand went up. Majority of Leave voters, plenty of Tory voters, zero hands up saying they thought Boris Johnson was telling the truth. But that's just about one man who has already lost the public. And he has lost the public despite what his cults tried to claim. But last night's similar question and response should be a warning sign for the wider Parliamentary Conservative Party, who, again, keep looking inwards instead of out towards the voters. This is why they're going to lose. This is why they're going to lose, because they're not paying any attention to voters. Fiona Bruce this time asked for people to put their hands up if they supported the government's Rwanda scheme for asylum seekers. Not a single hand went up. Someone put their hand up shortly afterwards to ask a question, but they weren't supporting the policy. They wanted to ask why the government were not just processing claims properly. So not a single hand went up in support of the policy amongst an audience which is mostly Leave voters and a very large number of Conservative voters. Now, I'll tell you what I find really interesting about this. Most people don't really know what the Rwanda scheme even is, other than it's something to do with refugees. And this is because the government frequently contradicts themselves and the wording of the agreement to keep people deliberately confused. They know people aren't just going to look up the agreement online. Some people think the flights are just to send people for processing so they're not clogging up hotels in this country. They're not. There is no processing. The people whom the government wants to send there will be left there forever. And the government have now confirmed that if they try and send a child and the child resists, they will physically restrain them. There's no claim there's any processing going on there. Some people think we're sending a load of asylum seekers to Rwanda to reduce the number coming into Britain. This is also not true for two reasons. First, the plan doesn't involve sending a load of asylum seekers anywhere. It involves sending a very small number of asylum seekers to Rwanda, purely for the headlines. It won't even make a dent. If you were to look at a chart of asylum seekers each year, it won't even make a dent in it. And it comes at fantastic cost to the taxpayer. It'd be way cheaper just to process the claims, deport those who fail and put to work those who don't. Second, the plan involves bringing back refugees from Rwanda. It's a two-way process. And the interesting thing is, if you read the deal, there's a bit of a limit on how many we can send to Rwanda. There's no limit in the agreement on how many Rwanda sends to us. So if this scheme actually ran, of course, it's hideously illegal, so it's probably not going to. But if it did, it could actually involve bringing back more refugees from Rwanda than we send there. Don't think many members of the public know that one either. But here's what I find interesting. I'd be willing to bet that if you ask a random group of Conservative voters in any town or city in Britain, and especially one which has at least one Tory MP, and Bristol, I think, is split. I think it's got 2 Labour MPs and 2 Tory MPs, as I think I had a quick look at. I bet some people would, of course, put their hands up to support the scheme. So here's the thing. So a load of far-right commentators were all really confused by this. Bless them. And they saw, well, no hands up. And they assumed that it must be that the audience is biased. And I had to point out to one of them, yes, it is biased. It's biased towards Brexit voters and it's biased towards the Conservatives. But you can understand their confusion, because I am going to say, if that audience had, as soon as they come in, if they'd have been asked the same question, I bet you some would have put their hand up. And that's why they're confused. That's why they're thinking it's a stitched up audience. It's not, well, it is a stitched up audience, but in favour of the Conservatives and Brexit. It's not stitched up against them. It's not got a lot of lefty lawyers in the audience. What I think has happened is there would have been, I mean, there were loads of Tory voters there. There were loads of Leave voters there. But not one person supported it. Why not? It's a good question. Why not? Do you know what I think? I think that unlike a random sample of Conservative voters, that audience had already, before they were asked their views, already been listening to a few facts about the Rwanda scheme from the panel, which included a Tory MP. So they'll have listened to what he had to say, listened to what others had to say. There was a Tory commentator there as well. There's always a right-wing leaning in the panel. You maybe get a Labour MP, and that's probably it. Everyone else is usually right-wing. So they'll have had all that, but they'll have had some facts at least that make sense. So as I say, I think if they'd have been asked the question before any discussion, I think some would have put their hands up. I think the reason no one put their hand up is because all of a sudden they'd been introduced to a few facts about the scheme. Now, isn't that interesting? Isn't it interesting that even Tory voting, Brexit supporting voters may not think that the government's flagship asylum policy, and this is their grand policy, this is their thing, that they may not think it's any good once they hear a few details. Imagine what would happen if more of the public, and by the public I mean more of the key voters in the marginal constituencies, started to realise that Tory asylum policy is like the emperor's new clothes. That once they see it for what it is, they realise there's nothing there. Tories would be buggered then, wouldn't they? I mean, what else would they have left? If the public, if key voters specifically, saw that there was nothing in these plans of theirs, that it didn't do anything, just cost us money, where would they turn to? What have they got left? Wouldn't it be a shame if more swing voters in these important election battlegrounds started to see how insubstantial the government's policies really are? But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.